what does it mean to have faith? To believe in a God, in yourself, in something greater? Or is faith something stranger, not noble, not rational, but silent, terrifying and absurd? What if, to receive what you love most, you had to give it up completely? To walk straight into loss, without reason, without guarantee, and still believe it would return? Would you do it? Could you believe by virtue of the absurd? Today we speak of faith like it costs nothing. Have faith in yourself, trust the process, follow your dreams. But these words are worn out. They carry no weight. They ask nothing of us. Not just in commerce, but in the world of ideas too, our age is putting on a veritable clearance sale. Everything can be had so dirt cheap that one begins to wonder whether in the end anyone will want to make a bid. We live in a world that avoids the absurd. We avoid silence and sacrifice. We avoid that which cannot be explained. We consume instead of commit. We perform instead of believe, and we scroll instead of leap. But real faith, the kind that shakes the soul, the kind that is fear and trembling, real faith is absurd. And I'm not just talking about religion. Even the most profane need faith to love without defense, to create without applause, to rise each morning in the face of nothingness. So the question is not what you believe. The question is this: do you have faith? What even is faith? That's the question Søren Kierkegaard asked in his book Fear and Trembling, perhaps the most unsettling book ever written about faith. He doesn't write as himself. He speaks through a pseudonym, Johannes de Silentio, a philosopher, a skeptic, a Hegelian even, a man who does not claim to have faith but is haunted by it. Johannes doesn't define faith. He doesn't reduce it to a doctrine or a system. Instead, he tells us a story. The most absurd story about faith ever written. It is the story of a man named Abraham. Old, powerless and unknown. A man who had spent years trying and failing to have a child. And then one day, against all odds, he is told by God that he will have a son. And that his son will give him the descendants to rule a nation. And, miraculously, he does receive a son. Maybe the most sacred love a human being can feel. The love of a parent for a child. But then, the same God tells him to kill the child. Take thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering, upon one of the mountains which I tell thee of. What the actual fuck? First we are told that our son will have descendants and rule a nation, and then we have to offer him? The very last thing you would want to do as a father, as a human being, is to harm your child. And yet, Abraham obeys. He rises early the next morning. He saddles his donkey. He leaves his wife behind. He travels in silence for 3 days with his son. Because really, what would you talk about knowing what you are about to do? They reach the mountain. They walk the last stretch on foot. He builds the altar, he binds his son, he raises the knife, and just as he is about to bring it down, God intervenes, and Isaac is spared. And that's where the story ends. Now, this is the point where Johannes de Silentio, our philosopher, becomes truly terrified. As you should be if you take this story even remotely seriously. There were countless generations that knew the story of Abraham by heart, word for word. How many did it make sleepless? Even if you're not religious, this story should strike a chord of real fear. not because it's violent, but because it is absurd, because it makes no moral sense, and yet it demands to be taken seriously. Kierkegaard even writes that this story is harder to understand than Hegel. It is said to be hard to understand Hegel, while understanding Abraham, why, that's a bagatelle. To go beyond Hegel, that is a miracle. But to go beyond Abraham is the simplest of all. I, for my part, have devoted considerable time to understanding the Hegelian philosophy. Believe also that I have more or less understood it. Am rash enough to believe that at those points where, despite the trouble taken, I cannot understand it, the reason is that Hegel himself hasn't been altogether clear. All this I do easily, naturally, without it causing me any mental strain. But when I have to think about Abraham, I am virtually annihilated. So Johannes asks the question we're all thinking. Why? What kind of faith is this? Is this even faith at all? We don't understand faith any better now. If anything, we understand it less. All we have seen is the absurd. So Johannes does what philosophers do. He turns to thought, to structure, to alternatives. He gives us 4 versions of the story to see where the faith might be hidden. But as we will see, each one brings us closer to understanding not what faith is, but what it isn't. Now, Johannes de Silentio gives us 4 alternative versions of Abraham. Each one more humane, more rational, more ethical. Each one easier to live with. In the first version, Abraham turns to Isaac and says, "Don't worry, my son. It is just a test. I would never hurt you." He reassures him. He softens the fear. He explains the command. This Abraham is clever. He stays in control. He never truly surrenders. And that's the point. He avoids the absurd by rationalizing it away. He removes the dread by offering a reason. It's comfort, it's logic, but it's not faith. In the second version, Abraham refuses. He says, "I can't do it. I won't sacrifice my son." He chooses love. He disobeys the divine command. And we admire him. He is moral. He is courageous. He is a tragic hero. Because the tragic hero sacrifices something precious for the sake of the universal, for justice, for country, for the greater good. It's understandable. It's noble even. But it's not Abraham. The real Abraham doesn't give Isaac up forever. He gives him up and still believes he will receive him back. Not by ethics, not by logic, but by virtue of the absurd. Then there's a version where Abraham obeys. He walks the mountain, he raises the knife, the ending is the same. But afterwards, he is never the same. The horror consumes him. He is haunted by what he almost did. And psychologically, this makes sense. Who could bear that weight? But the real Abraham does not collapse. He does not break. He returns whole, rejoiced, and believes. He carries the absurd, not as a trauma, but as faith. Finally, there's the safe version. Abraham walks up the mountain and offers a lamb instead. A simple substitute, a peaceful resolution. Crisis averted. But there is no faith in a shortcut. Without the silence, without the climb, without the knife raised, there is no sacrifice. And without sacrifice, there is no absurd. Each of these stories is more ethical, more relatable, more human even. Each one lets us breathe a little easier. But none of them are faith. They are attempts to understand Abraham, but Abraham I cannot understand. And in a certain sense I am tempted to say then I cannot admire him, though I bow before him. Why? Because Abraham does not act out of reason. He does not act for the universal, the Hegelian morality. He does not even act for morality at all. He acts in absolute inwardness, in silence before God. And here lies the paradox at the center of faith. Only by giving up everything, completely and forever, can we receive it back. Only by believing in the absurd does the absurd become reality. Through faith, Abraham did not renounce his claim on Isaac. Through faith, he received Isaac. And in making this leap, Abraham does something Hegel never could. Because for Hegel, the ethical is the universal. The individual must dissolve into morality, into reason, into history. Religion, for Hegel, is the reconciliation of spirit with itself. Faith becomes a rational moment in a logical system. But Abraham refuses to be reconciled. He suspends the ethical. He does not act for the universal, he acts for God alone. Where Hegel sees synthesis, Kierkegaard sees paradox. Then faith's paradox is this, that the single individual is higher than the universal. That the single individual determines his relation to the universal through his relation to the absolute. Not his relation to the absolute through his relation to the universal. And in that paradox, faith is born. And now that we have stood on the mountain, we can descend again into the world. Because not everyone is Abraham. And where most people might not have faith, at least some do. Some just chase comfort and pleasure, some sacrifice themselves for noble causes, and a very few walk the path of the night of faith. So let's see what kind of person you are. According to Kierkegaard, we start at the lowest level with the hedonist, the common person, the person consumed by commodities. Living at the whim of pleasure, their religion is happiness, a happiness chased through endless desire. And that desire isn't even their own. It's handed down by the big other. Social media, influencers, advertising, entertainment. Their faith is in comfort. Their hope is in dopamine. Their purpose is in being seen. They are not evil, just spiritually numb. They are without faith. Then we move upward to our tragic hero. This is the person who renounces, who sacrifices, who gives up something precious for a higher cause, who sacrifices comfort for duty, pleasure for principle, the personal for the universal. The tragic hero renounces the finite in order to win the eternal. He gives up the certain for the universal. Think of Hamlet, the Prince of Denmark. A man torn between revenge, justice, doubt and meaning. He hesitates, he suffers, but in the end he acts. He gives his life to expose corruption, to restore a broken world, to set things right. It is noble, it is tragic, it's even ethical. And we understand him. The tragic hero's sacrifice is public. It fits within morality. It makes sense to us. This is also the priestly type, the moral citizen, the good Christian in the eyes of society. For Schopenhauer, it's the noble one who denies the will, who renounces all desire for the sake of inner peace. But for Nietzsche, this is the worst kind of decay. The tragic hero is just the beginning of the herd, of the weak who say no to life. But then there is the night of faith. And this is something else entirely. The night of faith begins where the tragic hero also begins, with renunciation, with sacrifice. But he does not stop there. The tragic hero gives something up forever. But the knight of faith gives something up and still believe he will receive it back, not through justice, not through metaphysics, but by virtue of the absurd. This is the paradox, this is the leap. He gives everything and still believes. He believes what no one else can believe. No one can understand him. He believes in the impossible. Not metaphorically, but inwardly. And isn't that what we all face in some form? You in your life, you sacrifice time, energy, sleep, blood, sweat, even tears. You suffer, you endure loss, but you keep going. Why? Faith. There is no guarantee your work will pay off. No promise that your love will be returned. You could lose everything tomorrow, and yet you rise, you act, and you hope. Not because it makes sense, but because you believe, in silence, in solitude, in the absurd. Like the artist who paints in obscurity, refusing to follow trends, because something in them insists the world needs that image. Like the scientist who works for years on a theory everyone else has dismissed, and finally proves it right. Like the inventor laughed out of every room, until the thing he saw in his mind becomes real. They are not tragic heroes. Often they are alone. This is not noble suffering. It is not public virtue. It's not renunciation. It is faith. The knight of faith doesn't seek approval. He doesn't explain himself. He doesn't live for the world. He lives in the absurd. Quietly, inwardly, completely. And maybe so do you. Thank you for watching this video. I wanted to make this video for a while, since the book by Kierkegaard has haunted me for several years now. Now, seeing that my faith in the absurd is becoming reality by making these videos and people actually appreciating them, I had to make it now. I hope that you will realize your absurd in faith. I hope that something good happens to you today, and to see you in the next video.